Now that we understand about the overriding of methods and customizing even further our classes, it's time for us to look at another method that we can override on all classes that we create. Now, this is assuming that you understand, and I hope you do, because we talked about the object superclass, right? There's this object in Java superclass that all classes that we create, right, ultimately inherit from that main class. So if that's true, that means then manager inherits from employee, but because employee inherits from person, and person as our main class at this point here, right? This is what we call the parent class. A person is the ultimate, for us at least, the ultimate class, the parent class. That means it implicitly also inherits from the object class, because that's what all classes in Java inherit from, right? So if I say to, and you can see we have this public string to string, right? And you can see here is from object. This is the object that I was talking about, the ultimate class in Java, which is the object class. So every class that we talked about that's ever created in Java will ultimately inherit from object. If I hit enter now, look at this. It says override. The reason why it's saying override is because it is actually getting from super to string. Super in this case is going to be our super big object class, which we don't create. We never created it. It is just there in the Java libraries. So here it's returning the super to string, which we don't want because we want to override it to return whatever we want to return for our manager here. So at this point here, I can actually come here and say it's going to return this dot get first name plus space. I'm going to put a new line, this dot get ID plus space and comma plus new line, this dot get annual salary, and so forth. I can keep going. So what this does really is just going to return a string. So every class that we create, we can go to person, we're going to do the same thing, we're going to go to employee. We're going to be able to actually use this toString method here. Now, this is just for the purpose of us to actually see what our object does. In fact, you remember correctly, when we start talking about classes, every time we call this manager object here, it's going to go ahead and give us the toString version of this object, which in this case, we want to return what? The first name, get ID, and annual. Let me show you how this works. If I come down here and comment this out, this is so cool. So great. And come up here, let me comment this out as well so we don't get confused. Do you remember what happens if we say s out and we just pass in our manager as it is right there and save and run? Right, this happens. It says manager at this memory location, which is not very helpful to us, right? The reason why is because the manager class here, it doesn't have a way in which it will translate itself into a string so we can actually see the contents of that. If I come down here, look at the beauty, and uncomment all of that and save and run again, all of a sudden I said manager George 55 or 556 55,000, which is exactly what we said here. So it's going to say name, ID 556, and get salary. And notice the get ID, it's still calling this get ID here because we are inside here and we are overriding it. So it still does all the things that we want it to do. It's just that now we are putting everything into string by overriding this toString method that all classes, again, that you will ever create have access to. So now we have the state of the object to show in a string format the things that we want to show about the object. Interesting, isn't it? So now we're demystifying the small details about the intricacies of object-oriented programming in Java, things that we can do. Okay, so what I want you to do so you can see this, of course you can add get last name and other properties that we can actually do get from this object. I want you to do the same thing to our employee. Come down here and invoke the toString method and create your own hierarchy of classes, and you will see you will always have access to string. Okay? In fact, if I come somewhere here, notice I can actually instantiate a object. I can say object, look at that. There it is, object. Let's say object like this is equal to object like that. Okay, has to be new. This is not very useful for us, but I just want to show you something. New, and I'm going to say dot Look at this. The moment you say dot, there's other methods just for our object that you can go and get. So there's equals, hash code, toString. Aha, remember this toString that we used? Very much so, right? So all of these methods are methods that you can actually also invoke on any other class or object that you create. Because like I said, implicitly, all classes inherit from this parent object here, the ultimate object class in Java. In fact, I can show you that is true. Okay, this is just being nerds now, okay, which is pretty cool. If I come down here again for manager, look at this. I can say manager dot. The moment I say dot, we see all the things that we are accustomed to. There's get annual salary, get ID, all this great thing. But keep scrolling, and all of a sudden you start seeing something interesting. There's that equals again object. There's that hash code. There's that get class, notify, and all this we did not create. Starting from here, equals down, right? All of that, as you saw, it's from object. The reason why, like I said, that's another way to prove to you that indeed every class will inherit from the object superclass, the parent of all classes in Java that we will ever create or that have ever been created. Very good. Okay, so I just want to show you the intricacies of this wonderful language here. So thank you so much for your time. I'll see you in the next video.